Hi there.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? I'm
Good.
Annika.
Oh, good to see you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Not a problem. I hope I can contribute something valuable.
I'm certain that you will be able to.
At least coherent.
Well, thank you so much. We'll get started at 1.
That's fine.
But let me know if you have any questions in the meantime.
I think I'm just wanted to make sure I had everything set up right.
I think you're good. Hey, Shannon.
I thought you were in DC.
I am. I'm in a different room now for this
Okay.
meeting. Making it work.
Well, do you want to just let me record it and then just send you the transcript? Okay.
No, it's okay. Thank you. That's very nice of you. Hey, Leslie.
Hi there. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Let's see here.
Welcome everyone who's joining. We're just going to get started at 1 o'clock. Hi, Nancy.
Good afternoon.
Hey, Emma.
Hello.
I think we were just waiting on Dr. Lansing, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. Here she is. Hey, Dr. Lansing.
Hello, how is everybody?
Okay, it is 1 o'clock, so we can go ahead and get started. We already have a good number of people here. So today we have an exciting agenda. We're going to talk about farm to institution procurement. We have three panelists with us today. Leslie Sessom Parks from the Maryland State Department of Education. And with her, she has invited Jackson Uri. Did I say your last name correctly, Jackson?
You did, correct. Very good.
Excellent. He is the procurement coordinator for Frederick County Public Schools. And Emma, I'm going to say your last name incorrectly. Emma Jagaz from Moon Valley Farm. Please correct me, Emma. I got it. Okay. And I have a few announcements in general, but I will turn it over to Dr. Lansing and Nancy to get us started and say hello.
Yeah, thank you so much. So thank you everybody for coming. We're really excited to have this talk. And for those of you, last month we talked about labor. This month we're really focusing in apprenticeship opportunities last month. And this month we're really focusing in on procurement and looking at, how can we make we want local food in our, local schools and in our local communities, universities, hospitals, and how can we make that connection, easier to do, and what are the current roadblocks so we better understand that. So we're really excited for this panel, and we appreciate all the panelists being here for this really good, hopefully will be a really insightful discussion. So thank you. Nancy, you want to add anything, please?
I would echo Dr. Lansing's thank you to the panelists. Leslie's been an incredible member of the Food Council, and we really appreciate her insight regarding the Department of Education's efforts to procure local food. And we appreciate both Jackson and Emma for joining us, but also for their success in Frederick County. And look forward to hearing from you.
Great, thank you both. I realized I did not introduce myself. My name is Annika Lefebvre. I'm the Food Systems Resilience Coordinator with the Maryland Department of Emergency Management, and I also staff the Maryland Food System Resiliency Council. If everyone could please put their name and affiliation in the chat. That's how we typically do introductions for these committee meetings. And I did want to flag for everyone that this meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the council's webpage in the next few days. Okay, so some quick announcements. We have a handful of meetings and events to announce. The Food is Medicine Lunch and Learn for the Maryland Food System Resiliency Council is on December 9th from 12 to 1:30 p.m. I have a flyer on the next slide about that. There's also an upcoming Cultivating Innovation in Maryland's Agriculture and Technology Conference on the 12th from University of Maryland. The next Environment and Production Committee meeting is not going to be until January because it conflicted with the Cultivating Innovation Conference. So we're having a little bit of a winter holiday for this committee. And then the next full FSRC meeting is on February 6th. And all of those meetings are accessible to the public on the council's webpage. So we hope that everyone can make it to this Food is Medicine Lunch and Learn. It's open to the public. We have Holly Freistadt from the Milken Institute joining Dr. Alyssa Moran from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, and Evan Lutz, who is the owner and founder of Hungry Harvest. Okay, and here's the flyer for the Cultivating Innovation in Maryland Agriculture and Technology Conference. All right, and with that, we are just going to get right into our panel discussion. I have a list of questions, but I would love for the committee members to please participate in this discussion too. It's very important, I think, for you to raise your questions as well. So we can go ahead and get started, and I will stop sharing this screen so we can see everyone. Okay. Do you want to say anything before we get started, Nancy and Dr. Lansing, or are we ready to go ahead?
I think it'd be
All
great
right,
for
good.
the panelists to just, if you could introduce yourself, a little bit of your background. I'd appreciate just getting to learn a little bit about everybody else, and then we can start into the questions. So maybe we'll start with Leslie, if you want to introduce yourself and your background, and then we'll move on through the panelists. Thank you.
Certainly. So hello, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to present to you today. My name is Leslie Sessom Parks. I am the Chief of Professional Development and Performance at the Maryland State Department of Education in the Office of School and Community Nutrition Programs. Although I'm generally responsible for training, we also are responsible for other special initiatives, and Farm to School has come under my responsibility. So we've been very active in Farm to School for about 3 years. You may remember we presented to you, I guess it was last spring, and discussed our sustainability study that we published last year. And we'll put a link in the chat for those of you who may not be familiar with it. But we're committed to trying to sustain Farm to School in Maryland and grow it, and have developed some initiatives, some of which we may discuss today or not. But there are a few initiatives that we've created to, help sustain and grow Farm to School. My background is in public health and social work, of all things, but I've been with MSDE in the nutrition department since 2018. I guess I also would like to thank Jackson and Emma for joining this panel. We were hoping that Grace Leatherman would also join us today, but she had a family emergency. But I think between the three of us, we'll be able to answer the questions that were provided and lend some insight into Farm to School procurement as far as school districts are concerned. Jackson, you want to go?
Sure. My name is Jackson Ure. I'm the procurement coordinator here with Frederick County. I've been here about 2 years, and my background, I was trained as a chef out of the CIA and many years ago, but I've done pretty much every aspect of food service, from hospitality to medical facilities, as well as conference centers, hotels, that kind of thing. So that's pretty much it.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emma Jagaz. I'm the owner and farmer at Moon Valley Farm. We are a farm and a food hub serving a year-round community-supported agriculture program, restaurants, an online farmers market, schools, and we collaborate with nonprofits to serve over 1,000 families a month under Food as Medicine programs. I started Moon Valley Farm in 2012, and until 2020, we were just serving direct to consumer outlets. With the help of a Marbidco project, we increased our capacity to sell to institutions So Frederick County Public Schools was our first institutional customer back then. And ever since, we have been collaborating with Frederick County Public Schools, and in addition, Montgomery County Public Schools. And more recently, we've started to collaborate with MSDE for serving 10 other counties in Maryland.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you all so much for sharing your background. And I did want to highlight that Leslie and Kanika Campbell, who is also on this call, presented to the council in May. As Leslie said, in the recording for that presentation on their sustainability study is available on the council's webpage, which I have linked in the chat. To get started, I had a kind of general question. I was wondering, can you describe what the government process for procurement looks like in terms of putting out a bid to work with new vendors? I guess try to give the meeting attendees an understanding of like what that process looks like. What information do you need to collect from the vendor? How long does it take? And what is needed for education or assistance to prepare the producers to participate in that vendor application process?
Sure. So I'll take it from the state perspective, and then perhaps Jackson can talk about it at the county level. So it's arduous. Obviously there are processes and paperwork that need to be completed. And the few instances that we have put out solicitation for local foods, that process in-house in terms of developing the scope of work, getting it approved, getting it through the Office of State Procurement, it was long. So getting out of procurement can take anywhere from 9 to 18 months in our experience, before it ever hits EMA, which is the bid board for the state, and before any agricultural producer can respond to that solicitation. So I think, Jackson, maybe you want to talk about what that process is from the county.
Sure. So, our purchasing, we have a purchasing department that actually sets out the bids, as the one that we just did recently for farm to school products, which Moon Valley and Catoctin Mountain Orchard were both awarded that bid. And once we have that set up, then from the procurement aspect, we need to go in and have that person set up as a supplier to our county, which that usually involves more of the financial, like, okay, this is, we would like to see like information given to us about what you're going to produce for us, what price it's going to be, and then be able to set up them as a supplier. And then from that step, it goes on to creating a PO, which is how we operate here in Frederick County. It's usually going to be an open PO, where we have a bulk amount of money that we are agreeing to spend with a supplier, or in the cases where we would have a grant, that PO would then be linked to the grant that we are currently using. And usually that process, depending on the communication between purchasing and the producer themselves, could take up to about a month or so on our end. Primarily, what we're looking for is, the cooperation of logistics with delivery, how do we do the ordering, and that kind of thing, distribution.
Jackson, can I ask a follow-up question to that, please?
Sure.
So on the process that you all have described, how much of that procurement is based on, how much of it is federal regulations that you're going to, how much is state, and how much is Frederick County? Like, where is, as you go through that process, where are those delineations?
Well, I think mostly when we're talking about any kind of regulations, obviously we have, nutritional requirements for different food items. And that kind of comes down from the supplier. For instance, if we're going to order, certain items, say a processed chicken product, it has to meet certain nutritional standards. And so it's more up to us to do our due diligence, do the background, say, okay, we identify a supplier. What are they going to give to us? Are they an approved processor from the state? And what are they going to be providing us? Is it appropriate for a K-12 type of operation? So that's pretty much where we come from it on our side. And then when we're talking about, getting the two together, then we talk about, all right, the state allots us a certain amount of commodity dollars every year based on our enrollments. And then those commodity dollars, or pounds, I should say, not really dollars, but those commodity pounds then are allocated to the different processors. And that's how we identify, okay, so we're going to give so much to our cheese manufacturer, so much to our chicken manufacturer. And then using those commodity pounds, we then purchase through them, as well as purchasing produce through a DoD program, and as well as getting brown box commodities from the state.
And also, I'd like to add to that, with regard to our farm to school procurement, we've so far to date have only initiated one, although we're developing another for a different project. In that procurement, we only ordered produce. So pretty much we didn't have to worry about the USDA nutrition standards for school meals. And most of the process was regulated by state procurement. So, in terms of the template and the way in which producers have to apply to or respond to the solicitation, all of that is determined by the state.
Thank you all. And I was wondering, Emma, could you speak a little bit to the producer experience of getting your foot in the door with these institutions, and what that was like for you, or what that's like for other farmers, and how also do you navigate like crop planning around these, like, I think longer term potential wholesale purchases?
Sure, that's a big question. So on the navigating the procurement, on that end, I mean, there's a simple, I think navigating Emma and the requirements for the RFP is pretty straightforward. You're basically bidding on certain produce items in certain packaging quantities with certain standards at what price you can offer. And you're submitting that for, competitive analysis, basically, for competition among the other bidders. So for the RFP, that is a pretty straightforward process. And I've had relatively little issues navigating the Emma site. The MSDE bid that we bid on was a totally different process with different standards. And so I guess it depends on what way you're getting into the door of selling to these institutions. I will note that initially, when we first started selling to Frederick County Public Schools, all we needed was a purchase order. And because we were below the threshold, it was okay to just get started selling. And that was a really great way for us to get our foot in the door. And sort of try on this sales channel without a commitment on either our end or the end of the buyer, the schools. Some of the challenges that we have are, well, they're pretty great. I mean, we are focused on year-round sales, and we're focused on having diversity of products and high quantities of all of them, considering all of our sales channels are serving hundreds and thousands of individuals. So we do focus on volume and quantity, but some of the challenges with schools in particular are a lot of the time the abundance that we have in August and September of those really whole foods, fruits that you can hold in your hand and just rinse off and eat as a child in a cafeteria, like peaches or pluots or plums, grapes. Those kind of things are really quickly going out of season, and most of the time in collaborating with schools, either they're constrained by budgets not yet being approved in August or September and sort of waiting on funds, or there's such a high volume of work and low staff capacity for taking on additional programs at that time that we don't get started until October, where we have more abundance of produce that requires processing and or cooking in order for schools to reach them. So although we do have a strong abundance of products and availability throughout the winter months, they are typically produce items that need cooking, sweet potatoes, winter squash, onions, collard greens, carrots that are large. And certain times we have things. Carrots is a really great example of something that we have hundreds of thousands of pounds of carrots right now. And for schools to just dump them onto a cafeteria line, they need to be much smaller than the carrots that we've harvested and washed and have in storage. For us, we need to be a processing facility in order to dice carrots or make them much smaller. And that is essentially a whole other business. That's a commercial kitchen. You need the health department involved. So it's hard for us to not only have hundreds of thousands of pounds of carrots and have the cold storage capacity, have the capacity to harvest and wash all of that on the producer end, but to meet the needs of the schools, we also need to have this other business, a commercial kitchen, where we can have the giant food processors that take our average size carrots and make them, consumable for preschoolers. So there's a lot of challenges like that. Additionally, with producers like me and the other 50 farms we work with, we really focus on storage crops. So right now in our food hub, we have upwards of 500,000 pounds of apples in cold storage. That's a lot of apples. For producers like us, we have a little bit of anxiety on whether or not we're going to make sales on all of these before they go bad. So for schools, most of the time our contracts aren't very firm, whereas as well as their capacity for cold storage is very limited. So we can't say each school can take 5,000 pounds of carrot or apples right now, and we're still searching for buyers. So if without firm commitments for the future, we want to serve all of our customer bases, and ultimately we have to keep ourselves in business among all of our sales channels, and we might sell out of certain items because of lack of future commitments.
Mm-hmm. Which is something that we hope to address in one of our initiatives to be able to implement forward contracting, so we can, so school systems can commit in advance to some of these products.
And Leslie, just to follow up on that, are there, with the forward contracting, is that moving forward, or are there any roadblocks with that? How is that process? Where are we in that process?
Well, that's a conversation that's a larger conversation, and that idea and that plan is part of a project that we have initiated, known as the Local Food Exchange, which is essentially an online system for ordering and fulfillment. It's a system where school districts can go in to this online platform, online website. They can source and identify products among a number of producers, and the database of producers will be able to then indicate whether or not they can supply those products. And then through that system, they'll be able to do that online contracting. But that sounds great, but there are a whole lot of steps, and also procurement regularities and processes that first have to be ironed out before that can be implemented. So it's an idea at this point. And just so you know, the RFP for that technology part is in play, it's in process, but we haven't yet gone further than that. So this is something that will come in the future. But we recognize the issue, and that's why we initiated it.
No, that's a wonderful initiative. That's really great. And I'm assuming, I'm going to ask this question, but I think I know the answer. I'm assuming that this isn't connected at all with Maryland's Best from MDA, that it'll be a separate system. Is that correct?
Well, to my knowledge, and I think Mark, maybe others are on, Maryland's Best is a list, just like the Certified Farm and Fish Program provides a list, and we want to include all of the farmers in Maryland in our database. And so, but what we're talking about is a system, interactive system that you can, move in and do things in, and parties can talk to each other. So it's order and supply, all of that happening within the system.
So you would be able to purchase within the system.
Yes. Again, sounds easy enough, but there are, because of county and state laws, there are things to be ironed out, overcome, worked out, implemented.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Leslie, one of the things that you mentioned in May was that there was some different interpretations of what the word local means in terms of getting to that goal of purchasing 20% of food for Maryland institutions from local producers. I was
Sure.
curious if MSD has made any progress with that, or like helping local education agencies navigate that.
Sure. So first of all, I'd like to confirm something. So the 20% requirement, which is a wonderful goal, it is not applicable to counties, to my knowledge. It's applicable to state agencies. Nonetheless, there was a 20 cents incentive for each school meal that included a local product, which was passed in 22, I believe, but has yet to be funded, and will go out again for the upcoming legislative season for consideration. But now I said that, ask me the question again.
I asked about defining local, and
yes.
you mentioned with the study that there were some different interpretations of what that means.
Yes, I'm sorry. So I just wanted to first clarify that 20% rule. But yes, so we're defining local as within 400 miles of the delivery site. However, we are requiring or prioritizing, if you will, those producers who adhere to the guidelines of the Certified Farm and Fish Program. So we want to give priority to that. One of the challenges with only staying within Maryland, strictly within Maryland, is that there are not enough table crops to really supply the quantities that are needed in schools. In fact, I had a couple of little statistics. I just wanted to pull them up. I looked at 2 school districts just as an example. So our 2 largest school districts, one of them serves 17 million breakfast and lunch meals. The other serves 15 million. We, obviously need a good deal of local product if we're going to include them in school meals. So it really helps us if we expand beyond the geography of Maryland, but we want to give priority to our Maryland farmers. So in our scoring and so forth, we will do that with our solicitations. Also, what will help is that the USDA also is encouraging geographic preference, and they are allowing language in solicitations for locally grown, locally raised, locally caught, and scoring preferences also in those solicitations.
Thank you for that clarification. And I guess that kind of ties into a question for Emma about like whether you think on the producer side there is a need for more wholesale purchasing. And you have a unique business model, as you're describing in the chat, with your farm hub. But with other smaller producers, like how do they weigh the different market options that are out there for them?
So how do producers choose to add schools as a sales channel? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I think I'm asking, is there need or desire on the producer side to have more of these outlets for your products?
Okay. Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, even before COVID, it is clear to farmers that diversity in their crop selection and their sales channels makes for a stronger business. But post-COVID, it's been farmers have been made very acutely aware of the need for diversification, both on their production side and on their sales and marketing side. I think it would really help a lot of the growers that we work with, who are primarily market growers who also sell to grocery stores, to know that the opportunity is available for growing for schools and getting on the same page with what the schools want, what are the specifications in terms of sizing, crop selection, packaging, and standards of quality. Because across our different sales channels, we have a huge variety of different needs. Like one example is that for, going back to carrots, for us, carrots are in high demand in a baby carrot for restaurant sales. So restaurants love a baby carrot. They want it to look like it just came out of the ground, and they want to roast it whole on the plate. And, but again, the baby carrot that a school is asking for is a different baby carrot than what a restaurant is asking for. So really being clear about what the standards are, what the options are for us growers, so that we can really easily decide whether or not this sales channel would be right for us. I think one of the benefits of being a food hub is that a lot of the growers can have the option within our business to sell those carrots to restaurants, or if they have higher volume, to schools. So how we get started with working with small scale growers, for example, is they can start to offer smaller quantities of items available in our retail store. So it's, they can offer really small quantities of things, 12 bunches of radishes. They can put, 50 pounds of tomatoes, and we can help guide them through the standard process for, increasing those quantities to our different sales channels. So, if a grower wanted to scale maybe one or two different items and sell those to the schools, we could help them collaborate with the schools on those, the variety, the timing, et cetera. Some of the challenges there do include that if we are collaborating with the schools under a certain program that might have grant funds that expire, or we're working with a certain program and the funding doesn't get approved right away in time for that item to be utilized. And one example of this is our cherry tomatoes. So last year, schools wanted cherry tomatoes from us in the late summer, early fall, and we had only grown field cherry tomatoes, and so we experienced an early frost, and those tomatoes weren't available in high quantities. So this year we planted cherry tomatoes in high tunnels in a late wave, so that we have a bigger quantity for it. Well, this year they didn't want the cherry tomatoes, so we were like a whole year behind in terms of producing for it. This year we got it. Well, this year they don't need it. So it's okay. I didn't lose any sleep over it because we just moved it through a different sales channel. But it can be really frustrating if, okay, this year they want a different item because the grant's expired, or because they just decided to menu a different item this year. Well, if we don't have a massive diversity in quantity and items available through our network, we're going to be a year behind.
Yep.
Oh, go ahead, Leslie.
Oh, no, I'm responding to the chat between Secretary Addix and Julie. The first question, I don't have it in front of me now, but related to, how MDA can help. That's a wonderful question, and it's a multi-layered response. And yes, we do need further discussion, but just simply off the top, there are several items. One is that we need to provide technical assistance, encouragement, and cultivation of other aggregators like Emma. Emma is the anomaly in many ways. Our experience with most of the producers that we've talked to in the state, we've been working through Future Harvest and UMES and really talking to smaller farmers. They have a hard time developing this capacity. So having more aggregation in the state regionally or regionally would be very helpful for moving products into schools. Also, yes, those specs that you mentioned, we can provide those, and through, for instance, our local food exchange program, they are, in the RFP for both unprocessed and processed local foods. So that's very important. I think another issue is helping streamline the solicitation process for farmers. It's Emma got through it. She said it wasn't too bad. There are many others who thought it was very challenging. The process is daunting. So we have to find a way to help them, and we have to find a way even to help our counties. We are trying to facilitate a way that farmers can respond to one solicitation and not have to, if they're interested in this school wholesale market, they don't have to go through 24 counties. They just do one solicitation, and then the school districts can opt into that, and everyone can then, order and supply between each other. So, that's one of the items that we also need to address. We're trying to, as much as we can, despite the limitation on table crops, we're still trying to increase the volume of local foods in school meals, because right now, most of the spending is for fluid milk and not really for much else. I mentioned the two largest districts earlier. Only 2% of their total spend for food goes to local food. So, even though that between those two counties, that works out to $1 million, which is not bad for a small farmer or a couple of small farmers, but we feel we could increase that. And I think we need to look at some of our procurement processes to help facilitate that, as well as I mentioned earlier, cultivate more aggregation.
Thank you.
We had-
And this, oh, go ahead.
So we had some success with Montgomery County Public Schools, and also actually back in 2022 through the Fresh Fruits and Vegetable Program at Frederick County, where although the school menu, the cafeteria menu was made many months in advance, they were able to have a placeholder for a vegetable or fruit item. So, although the menu included a vegetable or fruit, they didn't specify with rigidity what that specific produce item was. So we were able to have a lot of flexibility in terms of what we were offering that week on the menu based on what was available. And I think that kind of framework in the cafeteria menu planning can really support growers with the understanding that not each produce item has the same amount of prep time. And so maybe if there's an item that needs additional prep work, like butternut squash, for example, even if it comes diced, it still needs to be cooked compared to grapes, which just need to be washed, that it can maybe have in Montgomery County, they can say, okay, this is a low labor intensive menu besides the produce item. So maybe we can add a higher touch produce item in this week and a lower touch one when the rest of their menu is higher touch, if that makes sense. So planning labor around the rest of the menu.
That's really amazing to hear. And that's actually very closely aligned with what I was going to ask for both you and Jackson. One of the questions that Nancy raised when we were talking about this meeting was how does the procurement coordinator for an LEA translate the school menu into this purchasing process and keep the local growers in mind? Jackson, is there anything that we're missing that we haven't touched on yet?
Well, I think that a lot of what we've talked about is about how we can prep the vegetables or get them already processed, so it's easier for the schools to use. And what we've tried to do here with working very closely with Moon Valley is to select items that we pretty much know is going to go into all the schools almost every day. And then also using a vegetable or a fruit of the month on a particular day where we would say, okay, well, this day we're going to do, lunchbox peppers, or on this day we're going to do, another type of item. And as Emma just said, we would then say, okay, if this is the day we're going to be presenting the vegetable or the produce of the month, we know that we're going to have extra labor involved because we may have to be, cooking or producing those things. But on the other side of it, it's let's get the most we can get into the schools that are going to be used every day on the salad bars and on those types of things. And as we move forward into the spring, and going more towards with cucumbers and those types of things that we can get in, or even cherry tomatoes. So it's working very closely, and I'll tell you, Moon Valley has been a wonderful partner for us. I mean, they've taken on so much to make this work that it's just, we're very grateful to have them working with us and them working with the other smaller farmers to bring in the amount of product that we need. Then on the other side is getting the schools to like basically buy into, okay, this is the type of product that we're using now, and this is how it's handled, and doing education on that side.
I'd love to point to an example of success or a model of success in Howard County that we've been collaborating with since the start of this MSDE program, where it's the Roving Radish is a government-backed processing facility that has the capacity to store produce for smaller farmers, as well as wash and chop for the schools. So with the MSDE bid giving us some allowance to sell to those to Howard County Public Schools, we're collaborating with the Roving Radish to help procure for more Howard County based farmers. And like Jackson said, if those farmers aren't producing enough volume yet, we can backfill in from either our farm or some of our other partner farms to meet the needs of the schools, so that procurement directors can confidently order, say, 250 pounds of something. And although it might come from 3 different farms, you're getting your orders filled, which I think that is the biggest strength of a farmer-led food hub, to mitigate the frustration and basically game ending or relationship ending frustration of not coming through on orders. And so, yeah, I would like to point to that as well as the Montgomery County processing facility, where the counties that have processing facilities have a lot more capacity to order diversity in their produce and not overwhelm their cafeteria staff.
Thank you. So in the chat, we had a question from Harrison Palmer. What threshold is MSDE using to define small farmers as the target audience?
Oh, we don't have a threshold. That's a term that we use. My understanding that in Maryland, all farms are considered small. But for any farm that's interested in doing wholesale to schools, we welcome them. For one of our grants from the USDA, they purposely wanted to target those who were considered socially disadvantaged. It wasn't required, but it was, again, a priority. So we don't have a threshold per se. We want to work with, our Maryland farmers, and we let them define themselves. We just want to know, can you provide to schools? And if you cannot, how can we partner you with another farm to get the quantities that we need?
And Teresa, can you clarify your question? Are you asking how does the school count the number of farmers they're working with?
I can actually answer that. So how we invoice, you see an invoice for Moon Valley Farm, and you can also see the farms that that are filling the products. So on our software system, whenever a user logs in, you can see what the source is, and you can filter by whatever constraints you want. Like we are a certified organic farm, and if you're only looking for organic produce, you can filter by organic, and the invoice will show that as well.
But in that example with Howard County and the Roving Radish, you said you can backfill for a smaller farm. So do they see Moon Valley and the other 2, but you're the main person that they
pay?
using?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're the person that they pay, but they can
And
see.
you're the hub for those others.
Correct. So we pay the farmers, they pay us. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you.
Just a note back to Harrison, he said he could help with those connections. We welcome that. Just so you know, in terms of any communications and promotions that we have done, we are using your Maryland's Best and your certified farm and fish program lists. Those are the farmers that we know about. And so, you know, we've cultivated lists and that's the foundation of our list. So we'd love to work with you one-on-one. We look forward to that partnership.
So we're coming up, we have the last 10 minutes of the meeting, but I think I did not actually say to our panelists during this meeting that the reason that we're having this conversation is because the council has been mandated by statute to increase the amount of institutional procurement of Maryland certified foods. And the committee, the Environment and Production Committee, has created a number of recommendations on how Maryland might approach this. But it's still an unanswered issue. And so they're trying to look for other strategies. I'm curious if anyone from the committee wants to share what this past year's recommendations were for increasing procurement, like in schools, for instance, such as with food preservation.
I can go over a little bit. Yeah, so a lot of it is exactly what you're saying. There's the roaming radish, Montgomery County has facilities, but we need more of these processing facilities in other places. And so that's kind of what we have focused on is ways to increase the amount of funding to set up these processings, because you have to have initial capital for that. Also, there's some pilot programs for farms to schools that as Leslie attested to, but some of them were not funded fully. So trying to get those funded so that you have the incentive for the farmers and schools to make those connections and money behind that. So that's really where we've been focusing is those processing and extra funding for that 22 cents that Leslie talked about. But are there other things that if you have the people in the room actually, but if you were to have other legislators and state lawmakers in the room, are there things that you would suggest that, you know, it would make my life a lot easier if I had A and B to get local food into a school system? And this could be from each of your perspectives.
Well, I'm sorry, you start, Jackson.
Okay. I mean, and here again, not to sound like a broken record, but it goes basically back to the processing of the vegetables, because we would love to be able to get in, broccoli, and which we have had processed before by Moon Valley. But then you run into the seasonal type of aspect, like, is it available all year round? And there's nothing we're going to be able to do really about that. But the items that we can we get them processed so that when we send them out to the schools? Because what you want to try to mirror is the same thing that you're getting from a program like DOD. Whereas where we get from them, we're getting bags of broccoli florets or, those types of things. And I think that's really going to be the key, is to be able to support places like Moon Valley or do incentives for school districts to develop a processing center, which would be more of a self-contained type commissary where we would buy in bulk, prep it, send it out to the schools. But that's a whole nother, state or stage you have to put in to your purchasing and processing. So
what I was going to, thank you, Jackson, I'd like to add is, until we can really facilitate ordering in large quantities, local food for school will just be, little taste tests here and there. It won't be able to penetrate all the schools that we have and the quantity that we need. There's lots of competition for our local farmers. Jackson just mentioned DOD. Our school systems it won't necessarily be local, but it could be from New Jersey. they can get apples or whatever they need from somewhere else and use their entitlement dollars to really drive Maryland local. We've got to be able to do those things, those systemic things that create the ability to do so. So, one is the processing. The other is the streamlining of the procurement process. On both sides, both the county side as well as the farmer side, we need to do something so that we make that much easier for those two parties to order and supply to each other. So that's that would be my wish list to add to.
Wonderful. And Emma, do you want to add your perspective?
Sure. Yeah. I wrote in the chat that programs like Marbidco's, it was a mouthful, but it's like a farmer-led food hub infrastructure grant farm to institution project. That program allowed us the capacity building that we needed in order to scale our production. Because it's pretty easy for farmers to scale production in the fields, but it's hard for us to scale the cold storage capacity and the washing capacity, the refrigerated truck and delivery capacity, and our online software capacity as well. So, and that's not even to mention starting a processing facility and the whole other business enterprise that creates with food safety and the health department and everything like that. So I again point to the examples of the county owned processing facilities as being my ideal answer to that. And then projects like Marbidco's project, where we are empowered to scale our businesses, to scale our production to meet the needs, because the acreage is there and the need for farmers to diversify our sales channels, the want and desire for farmers to increase our sales is all there. Most farmers I know are terrified to go through this process with schools because it is multi-year and it is not guaranteed and it is very hard. So, for me, it felt worth it because Marbidco really helped us hedge the bets on that. And we were able to secure a purchase order that allowed us to get our foot in the door and try it out for a year before going for the RFP, which was more complicated. So yeah, I've got a couple of other questions I see in the chat here. I don't know if you want me to just go in.
Yeah, please. Yeah. So thinking about, your Marbidco grant and where you are right now and the capacity that you are now, what is your expansion capability? Are you at capacity? Could you expand more? Where are you now?
Right now, we are waiting for the release of some additional grant funds in order to build our cold storage capacity. The RFSI grant is hopefully going to double our cold storage capacity and our refrigerated truck capacity, as well as our capacity to process food. So our capacity, if you will be greatly increased in the future. But it is, what our capacity is sort of tricky because we do have so many farmers that have a lot of cold storage and trucks themselves. So we are able to make a lot of things happen with the constraints that we currently have. So I would say that we're not necessarily at capacity, but we also haven't started selling to all of the counties through the MSDE project yet, and we'll see. So ask me again in a few months.
And I know we just have another minute or two, but just to maybe quickly get through some of the questions that were left in the chat is, what is the typical lead time for a school order? And how do farmers plan quantities to grow earlier in that season?
I think Jackson, you probably
Well,
could.
I know that, when we're working with Moon Valley, we usually try to give them at least a week's notice. But then you're talking about a school projecting what they're going to need almost for 2 weeks, because they get the order to me, I give the order to Moon Valley. And right now, for us at least, we have a warehouse, so we get the product shipped to our warehouse, and then we use our drivers to take the produce out to the schools. So the lead time between the time someone places the order and they receive it is probably, I would say, about 10 days.
So,
Between the time the school places the order and they receive what they had wanted.
so Jackson, for clarification, when do you do your menu planning? And if you were able to include local foods, you knew that you had a way to get them and so forth. When do you do your menu planning, and when then could you start saying, producer, we're going to need this for the fall?
Right. So as I had mentioned before, we're even though like when we're doing our menu planning, we're planning like at least like 2 months ahead of time. We are putting like blocks in there that they can, menu holders where people could put in different items if it was available. But as we were trying to use up things that we know for sure that we're going to be using on a regular basis, like salad mix, like spinach, cucumbers, things that we use every single day. And then using the monthly item as a taste test, or as the produce of the month that we would use, like we did with the lunchbox peppers.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, I saw Lisa's question. So that's what Frederick County does. Some of the bigger counties actually plan menus a year in advance, or they recycle menus,
Yeah, or you cycle menus, yeah.
Exactly. So it is possible, for them to plan long enough in advance to do forward contracting. They just need to, know that those products, they can get those products. That's always a big concern, will I be able to get the product? But yes, some of that planning can be done a year in advance.
Wonderful. Well, this has been, I wish we could talk for another hour, because this has been really insightful, and I really appreciate everybody's, your insights. I love how it's kind of at all three levels, and I think this was really great having the three of you here together. So I just thank you for coming, and thank you to everybody who asked questions and engaged. I hope this is just the start of more conversations. So I appreciate the three of you getting us started on this road to increasing, and all the work that you've already done to increase local. So I just want to, you should not only get a round of applause for what you've done here today, but also what you've been doing to increase food into schools. It's really great work, and we appreciate you sharing your insights.
Thank you.
Appreciate being invited. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
So